Welcome to Underworld UK, where Britain's darkest stories are brought to light. From the gritty streets of gangland London, Liverpool, Manchester and Birmingham, from Curtis Warren to the Cray twins to county lines and modern day true crime, we cover everything. Bringing you new videos every week. Subscribe so that you'll be notified when the next video is put out.
What if I told you that a man was released from prison after serving more than 10 years behind bars, only to go on a killing spree less than 2 weeks later? What if I told you that during his arrest, he claimed he wasn't acting for money, revenge, gang loyalty, or personal gain, but because an ancient Egyptian god had commanded him to kill? And what if I told you that years later, this same man would sue the state, arguing that they should never have released him in the first place? This is the disturbing story of Nikko Jenkins, a man described by some as a severely mentally ill killer, by others as a manipulative psychopath, and by many as one of the most dangerous inmates ever released from prison. Even today, more than a decade after his crimes shocked America, the debate continues. Was Nikko Jenkins insane? Or did he know exactly what he was doing all along? As you listen to this story, let me know where you stand, because this case remains one of the most controversial true crime stories of the modern era. Nikko Allen Jenkins was born on September 16th, 1986, in Denver, Colorado, before eventually being raised in Omaha, Nebraska. From the very beginning, his childhood was marked by instability, violence, and dysfunction. His mother, Lori Jenkins, had her first child at just 16 years old. His father, David Maggi, was significantly older and had a criminal history of his own. The relationship between Jenkins' parents was turbulent, with both sides later accusing each other of abuse and domestic violence. Growing up in this environment, Nikko's early years offered little sign of stability. By the age of 7, alarming warning signs had already begun to appear. In 1993, Jenkins was temporarily removed from his mother's custody after bringing a loaded handgun to school. Think about that for a moment. 7 years old. Not a teenager. Not a young adult. A child. Most children that age are worried about homework and playground games. Nikko Jenkins was bringing firearms into school. As he got older, the problems only escalated. He was accused of theft, repeatedly skipped school, and was placed in group homes due to behavioural issues. Staff reported that he frequently assaulted other children. In one incident, he whipped another child with a clothes hanger so violently that he was forced to leave the facility. By the age of 12, he had already attacked someone with a knife. Throughout his teenage years, Jenkins bounced between family homes, juvenile detention centres, and state-run facilities. Authorities repeatedly tried to intervene, but nothing seemed capable of controlling his increasingly violent behaviour. In 2002, after being returned to his family, his own father reported him to police for threatening him with a shotgun. Later that same year, Jenkins committed 2 armed carjackings. He was only 16 years old when he was sentenced to 18 years in prison. For many criminals, prison is intended to be a place of rehabilitation. For Nikko Jenkins, it appeared to become something else entirely. During his first incarceration, Jenkins developed a reputation as one of the most disruptive and violent inmates in the Nebraska prison system. Between 2004 and 2012, he accumulated an astonishing 71 disciplinary violations. These included assaults on inmates, attacks on correctional officers, drug use, gang activity, destruction of property, possession of contraband, and involvement in prison disturbances. At one point, he even fashioned a weapon from a toilet brush. The violence was relentless, but there was another layer to the story that would later become central to his murder trial. Jenkins increasingly began claiming that he suffered from severe mental illness. Psychiatrists who evaluated him found themselves divided. Some believed he was genuinely experiencing psychotic symptoms. Others believed he was exaggerating or outright fabricating them. Jenkins claimed he heard voices from ancient Egyptian gods. He spoke about hallucinations. He described commands coming from supernatural forces. Yet several mental health professionals observed that his symptoms seemed to become more dramatic whenever he was questioned closely. Some doctors diagnosed possible psychosis. Others concluded that he was displaying traits associated with antisocial personality disorder, narcissism, manipulation, and deception. Prison staff noted that during family visits he appeared organized, focused, and capable of directing relatives to file complaints and appeals on his behalf. According to reports, Jenkins even referred to aspects of his mental illness presentation as a skit. So what do you think? Were these the actions of a mentally ill prisoner desperately trying to explain what was happening inside his mind? Or was he learning how to use mental illness as a tool? Let me know in the comments, because this question would eventually become the center of one of America's most disturbing criminal cases. Despite his long history of violence and disciplinary problems, Jenkins was released from prison on July 30th, 2013, after serving approximately 10.5 years. Less than 2 weeks later, people would begin to die. At around 5 a.m. on August 11th, 2013, a police officer discovered a white pickup truck parked near a public swimming pool in Omaha's Spring Lake Park. Inside were the bodies of 2 men, Juan Uribe Pena and Jorge Cajiga Ruiz. Both had been shot in the head. Their pockets had been turned inside out. Investigators soon learned that the victims had been lured to the location by women under the promise of a sexual encounter. Instead, they walked into an ambush. At first, authorities had little idea who was responsible. But the killings were only the beginning. 8 days later, on August 19th, another body was discovered. Curtis Bradford was found outside a detached garage. He had been shot in the back of the head. What made the murder particularly chilling was the connection between the victim and the killer. Bradford and Jenkins had previously met in prison. In fact, they had posed together in a photograph less than 24 hours before Bradford's death. According to investigators, Bradford had been lured out under the belief that he would be participating in a robbery. Instead, he became Jenkins' third victim. Then came the murder that shocked Omaha even further. During the early hours of August 21st, Andrea Kruger, a mother of 3 and bartender finishing a late-night shift, was driving home after locking up the Deja Vu Lounge. She never made it home. At around 2:15 a.m., deputies responding to reports of gunfire discovered her body lying in the roadway. She had suffered multiple gunshot wounds. Her vehicle was missing. Later that day, her SUV was located abandoned miles away, with evidence suggesting an unsuccessful attempt had been made to burn it. 4 murders. 4 victims. 11 days. Omaha was dealing with a spree killer, and investigators were closing in. The breakthrough came through surveillance footage and forensic evidence. Detectives obtained video showing an associate purchasing the same type of ammunition used in the murders. Additional footage tracked movements connected to Kruger's stolen vehicle. The investigation quickly began pointing toward one man. On August 29th, 2013, Nikko Jenkins was arrested on an unrelated terroristic threats charge. Just days later, investigators conducted an interview that would last approximately 8 hours. During that interview, Jenkins confessed, but his explanation left investigators stunned. According to Jenkins, the murders had been sacrifices ordered by Apophis, the ancient Egyptian serpent deity associated with chaos and destruction. He claimed he had been commanded to kill. He insisted the murders were not random acts of violence, but acts of obedience to a supernatural force. As bizarre as the claims sounded, Jenkins never backed away from them. He covered himself in symbols associated with Apophis. He spoke repeatedly about the deity. He sent handwritten letters discussing his devotion. In one letter, he declared that he would protect Apophis' kingdom with savage brutality. The case was no longer just about murder. It was becoming a battle over sanity. Was Jenkins truly hearing voices? Was he suffering from schizophrenia or another severe psychiatric disorder? Or was he using mythology and religion to create a defense for crimes he knowingly committed? Even the experts couldn't fully agree. Some psychiatrists believed he displayed genuine signs of psychosis. Others believed he was a psychopath attempting to manipulate the system. Yet despite the disagreements, there was one point on which most experts eventually aligned. Jenkins was competent enough to stand trial. What followed was one of the strangest courtroom performances in modern American criminal history. Jenkins chose to represent himself. Throughout the proceedings, he continued speaking about Apophis. Witnesses described bizarre behaviour that included speaking in tongues, howling, laughing, and making disturbing outbursts while details of the murders were being discussed. Meanwhile, the evidence against him was overwhelming. On April 16, 2014, Nikko Jenkins was found guilty of all 4 murders. But even after conviction, the chaos continued. Throughout his incarceration, Jenkins repeatedly engaged in extreme acts of self-mutilation. He inflicted injuries on his face, tongue, and groin. He attempted suicide. He swallowed stolen keys, requiring surgery. Years later, his lawyers would claim that his mental condition had deteriorated even further, citing incidents where he cut himself while claiming to remove a tumour that did not exist. The question of his mental state refused to disappear. Then came one of the most astonishing developments in the entire case. In 2014, Jenkins filed a lawsuit against the state of Nebraska, seeking millions of dollars in damages. His argument was extraordinary. He claimed officials ignored warnings about his mental health and should never have released him from prison. Think about that for a moment. Most convicted killers deny responsibility. Most claim innocence. Most blame someone else. Nikko Jenkins essentially argued that the state should have known he was too dangerous to release. It remains one of the most bizarre legal arguments ever made by a convicted spree killer. In May 2017, a 3-judge panel sentenced Jenkins to death for all 4 murders. He also received an additional 450 years on weapons-related charges connected to the killings. Yet even after receiving 4 death sentences, the story refused to end. His family had become entangled in the crimes as well. His sister, Erica Jenkins, received a life sentence for her role in the murder of Curtis Bradford. His mother, Lori Jenkins, was convicted for purchasing ammunition connected to the killings. Other relatives, including an uncle and cousin, also received lengthy prison sentences for their involvement. The Jenkins case had evolved from the story of a single killer into a story about an entire family drawn into a web of violence and criminality. As the years passed, Jenkins remained on death row. Appeals followed. Mental health evaluations continued. Court hearings focused on his competency, intellectual functioning, and psychological condition. Then, in 2025, another twist emerged. Jenkins wrote to the courts requesting that his appeals be stopped so he could be executed. A short time later, he changed his mind. His legal team argued that his mental state was deteriorating. Questions resurfaced regarding his IQ, his competency, and whether further evaluations were necessary. Meanwhile, victims' families publicly criticized what they viewed as ongoing attempts to delay justice. Even today, the legal battles continue. More than a decade after 4 people lost their lives, courts are still wrestling with the same question that has haunted this case from the very beginning. Who exactly is Nikko Jenkins? Was he a severely mentally ill man who repeatedly warned authorities that he was dangerous? A man whose cries for help were ignored until 4 innocent people were dead? Or was he a calculating psychopath who learned how to manipulate doctors, prison officials, courts, and the media by hiding behind claims of mental illness? Perhaps the most frightening possibility is that the truth lies somewhere between the two. What cannot be disputed is the trail of destruction he left behind. 4 people were murdered in just 11 days. Families were devastated. An entire city was terrified. And a man who had spent years displaying violence and instability became one of America's most notorious spree killers. Today, Nikko Jenkins remains on death row, his future uncertain, his mental condition still debated, and his name permanently etched into true crime history. But after hearing the full story, I want to hear your opinion. Was Nikko Jenkins genuinely insane, or did he know exactly what he was doing from the very beginning? Let me know in the comments, because this is one case where the debate may never truly end. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you are a fan of true crime videos and news, then click like and subscribe. That way you will be notified when we put a new video out, and you are also helping our channel grow, so a huge thank you. See you next time. God bless.